Okay, can everybody hear me now? Okay, good. So something went wrong with microphones. I'm going to try that all over again. Before we get started, I would like to just share with you where the class notebook sits for this team, what we're doing, where we're going, and how you can find some information. So if you go back to the MIE, MCE, and Apple Mission Control page or team, you'll see that there is a class notebook. If this is the first time that you're clicking on it, it's going to ask you to get started and get set up. So please go ahead and do that and make sure that you're getting it going. I don't like using OneNote through Teams because I find that it's very slow and difficult. I like to open it up in the desktop app. If we open it up there, we can see all the information over there. And here is all the information that we've been talking through over the last couple of weeks and the information we need to go forward. So we've asked that the teachers start putting their hacks in over here, and we start making use of this so we can all collaborate. So you'll see some of the teachers have started putting their hacks in here. So please go through and watch their hacks, and as soon as you have completed your hack, put it in there. And in the hacks page somewhere, there is the code from your code to redeem on the MEC platform. So please go and find it. It's hidden in there somewhere. And then we have another competition running for you. So under the resources page, you'll see there's Twitter for teachers. There's a whole lot of information on how to use Twitter in your teaching and to enhance your classroom with it. So if you're on Twitter, please go have a look at our competition, tweet us out. We have prizes for you. Go have a look at that in a while. Okay. Now let's get on to our 21 CLD for today. Can I ask that if you are at home or somewhere and your mic is unmuted, if you can mute it, picking up sound. Thank you very much. So let's get started with today's spacewalk and with our connect point for today, and looking at the next two 21 CLD. So Wendy and I will take you through the next two topics, and so our agenda for today is the real world problem solving, and then Wendy will take you to knowledge construction, and then we'll break off into our breakout rooms again, and we're going to spend some time with our co-pilots just discussing where we are in the process and what we've been doing in the program so far. So a quick overview of the 21 CLD skills again. It's collaboration, which we did last week, and skilled communication is still coming. Knowledge construction will happen today. Self-regulation will come in the future, and today we'll do real world problems and then use of ICT. So let's get started with real world problems. So according to employees and future employees, the most important skills in the new recruits include teamwork, problem solving, and innovative thinking. We need to be bringing these skills into our classrooms to enable our girls and our students that matriculate here at Brescia that they are ready for the working world. Now, this may seem very scary and seem like it's easier to implement in the high school, but this can be done all the way down to grade R. And it's going back to looking at the level at where they are at and how do they problem solve? How do they find a real world problem in their world? So we're not expecting the grade noughts to now go and have a look and see how are they going to go change climate control for the whole of Africa. But maybe they have a small task. They have a litter problem on their playground. How are they going to find a solution for it? So when we're looking at a real world problem, it's in a real context at where they are at. So one of the key designs of this learning scenario is defined in a real world context. So it has to be in the real world, and which requires students to innovate by implementing their solutions. So it's not about going in and Googling the best solutions to this problem and we just go and slap that solution onto the problem. It's about them finding a solution that works for them where they are at, and then designing ideas for audiences outside of the classroom. And this is very important with the real world problem solving and innovation that Microsoft is looking for, is the fact that it is outside of their classroom setting. The example that they use is in one of the schools, I think it is in Washington. It's in a very big city. There's heavy traffic congestion at the two entrances of the school. but they only have a traffic officer at one of the entrances of the school. So the learners then went and wrote a letter to the council and found ways to get a traffic officer at the other entrance too. So it was a real problem that they were facing, and it was out of the classroom because they had to go and send letters beyond their particular classroom and to council in this case. Problem solving. Problem solving happens when students must develop a solution to a problem that is new to them. So it's not necessarily a new problem, but new to them. So what is very important here, it's not the teacher giving all the information and saying, here is everything you need, and here are the steps to solving this. They need to do it. And I know that this might be difficult in your particular subject area or where you are, but it's about something to think a little bit differently about how we teach, about how we do this in the classroom. It's not just about us going in and saying, you know what, I have all the answers, I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So learning activities that require problem solving do not give students all the information, and they don't specify the whole procedure. They complete a task that they have not been instructed on how to complete it. So they don't have all the instructions. They got to figure that out as we go. Then design a complex product that meets a set of requirements. So they need to now come up with a solution or a way of solving this problem. So often problem-solving tasks require students to investigate the parameters of the problem, to guide their approach. They got to generate ideas and alternatives. They got to devise their own approach or explore several possible procedures that might be appropriate to the situation. They got to find a coherent solution and test the solution and reiterate this in various forms. So when you go look at the rubric, and you'll go touch on it just now, you'll see how it's divided into the various steps. The next thing is with the real world problems, it needs to be a problem that is experienced by real people, and it's for a specific plausible audience. So there's very key people who are going to be affected by this. A story that I heard a couple of years ago was from Danefin, which really just struck me. So a couple of the tricks when they drove into school noticed all the people walking up and down the street, going to work, going to taxi ranks and all that. And they really saw this as a problem. How can they help these people on their commute in the morning and make the commute easier? And they decided to set up a coffee station. So from the school, the matrics would then go out and offer coffee to everybody walking past in the mornings. And that was a great way to solve that particular problem that they were seeing. And then it's specific, explicit contexts. For example, developing a plan for a community garden in a public park in their town has a specific context, learning which vegetables grow best in that area and at what time of the year those vegetables grow best. And then they have to use actual data. So it's not using fictitious data, but data that is relevant to that particular situation. And then quickly looking at innovation. Now, Microsoft's viewpoint of innovation when it comes to 21 CLD is innovation requires putting students' ideas or solutions into practice in the real world. So it's not just about coming up with great ideas and lofty concepts, but it's about saying, can you take that idea and go put it into the real world? And then innovation also benefits people other than the student. How can they take this and make it for people beyond their classroom? So it's not just about in their particular classroom, in their little bubble, but it goes beyond that, far beyond what their classroom can offer. And that is the key when they're looking at innovation. So Microsoft says that innovation also benefits people other than the student. It has value beyond meeting the requirements of a classroom exercise. The townspeople who tend the new garden in the public park and the teenagers who attend a written Shakespeare play benefit students' efforts, for example. So it's beyond just that particular context. Okay. It also counts as innovation if students create a project for a science fair, for example, or submit a poem to a literary group, because it's beyond just their particular context. There's other people coming to the fair, for example. There's other people going to read that poem because it goes in the publication. It's a bit further than that. So if you quickly look at the decision tree, you'll see the main requirement is problem solving. If you have problem solving within it, you'll go to the next level. One thing that we have been picking up is everybody thinks that if you get a level 1, you have failed. That is not how Microsoft scores this. A level 1 just means that in this particular area, this particular skill, you haven't met those particular requirements. It's not a fail mark, it's not a pass mark, it's just a level 1. That's all it is. So if your particular task has problem solving in it, then you move on to the next one. And if your students are working on real world problems, then you go to the next level. And so you go through the levels. So please don't think that this is a indication of you getting it right or wrong. It's just literally helping you understand where your particular project is aimed at. I've had some teachers ask if they have to take this rubric and fit it into all their tasks. This rubric is for you. It guides your understanding. You can obviously bring in some of the concepts. If you look at the next rubric, you can bring in these concepts into your own marking rubrics, but they're not there just to be put forward for the students. They are here to help you as a teacher. So that is my story quickly. If you have any questions, please direct them to co-pilots in the breakout sessions or direct chat us just now and we can try to answer some of them. But I'm handing over to Wendy.
And I was just saying that I was about ready to audition for the ENCA news team, but what I've realized is I'm clearly incompetent if I can't switch my mic on. So apologies for that. So welcome back, everybody. We're now talking about knowledge construction. And this particular rubric is a little less tangible in some ways. It's a bit harder to get your head around. And it really focuses on the kind of case studies that Microsoft provide. The main thing that we need to be aware of is that it's not just about regurgitating or reproducing what students can access on the internet. We have Google for that now. It's beyond that. Instead, it's about generating ideas and understandings that are new to the students. So they're applying their knowledge in what they're doing. So it is possible for you to set a task where students will compare and contrast information from two different sources and compare those sources or multiple sources as to what might be a balanced viewpoint, what might be not a balanced viewpoint, etc., etc. But it's not just about the students finding out as much as they can and then telling you what they know. They need to try and apply it. The other thing that we look at is also whether or not you're drawing on other subjects. And it's not that you have to work with that other subject, but rather that there are elements of your tasks or your activities or your projects that go across the methods, the content, or any other aspect of another subject. So if we draw into a little bit more detail, the generating ideas and understanding, the best way to describe this is the use of critical thinking skills and activities. So you're asking your students to interpret the information that they are finding. It's about drawing inferences, conclusions, reading between the lines from what they have come across and drawing their own ideas and conclusions from that. So for example, they might read a description of a historical period and try and understand why people of that era behaved in a certain way, what was driving them, what was influencing their behavior. The analysis part of it is really about trying to understand the information in its parts and how those parts relate to one another. So, for example, you could investigate the local environmental factors to determine which environmental factors may affect migrating birds. So there's lots of things that they can do to sort of break the information down and then look at how those parts relate to one another. Part of looking at how those parts relate to one another is actually synthesis. It's actually looking at what the relationships are. So as I said, comparing and contrasting perspectives from multiple sources is a good way to demonstrate synthesis. And evaluating, judging the quality, credibility, or importance of data, ideas, or events. So you might read different accounts of a historical event, and the students then evaluate which ones they feel are the most credible out of those sources. The next thing that we need to focus on is, for this rubric, that this is the part of the task, the activity, or the lessons where the students spend the most time and effort to construct the knowledge that they are working on. So it's building their knowledge by doing the research and understanding, and then actually taking it to the next level and creating that understanding that goes beyond what they originally researched. The next critical element of the knowledge construction skill is the application, as I've said, and you'll see that this is layered one on top of the other. It's the same sort of language being used, even though they're coming at it from different perspectives. And so, for example, if we look at students in a physics class, for example, they may actually construct their knowledge about heat principles from a study of the Earth's inner core, and then apply what they've learned to investigate the environment of Jupiter, for example. So it's taking what they've learned and applying it to a new situation. That's critical in this case. If you're looking at a language class, for example, your students could do a task where they are writing something for a particular audience, and then you ask them to rewrite it for a different audience. So they're having to rework what they've done in order to meet a specific target audience. Okay. When we talk about interdisciplinary activities, as I said, it involves the content, idea, or methods from other subjects. And this does not mean that suddenly you have to work with another department. What it does mean is that you start to draw the connections between what you're doing in your classroom and other subjects. So you might, for example, look at something like the example that Microsoft provide us with is you may get your students to investigate immigration and understand the issues around immigration, asylum seekers, refugees, etc. And then you could get them to apply that to writing a poem about being an immigrant. So in that way, you're drawing on some of the social sciences, but you're applying it in a language class. It does not mean that you now have to go and teach immigration. It does not mean that your social sciences colleague has to now be a part of your language lesson. It's just drawing those connections to other subjects, because we know they exist, but sometimes our students don't see that, and they live in a joined up world. It does not, however, count if subjects are typically taught together. So I'm thinking, for example, in the primary school where we teach social sciences, the history and geography are taught together as one subject, drawing on the history to inform the geography or vice versa. That doesn't really count. So it's important to understand that. Just very briefly then, looking at your rubric, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's fairly self-explanatory. Probably what is more useful is if you looked at the wording. So you're looking to see where you fit in. Are your students reproducing information, using familiar procedures, or are they actually building their knowledge by interpreting, analyzing, synthesizing, or evaluating information? Is the main activity knowledge construction? And does it also require application in a new context? And then finally, if you're looking for the sort of gold standard in knowledge construction, does it meet all of that? And does it then have learning goals in more than one subject? And that pretty much is that in a nutshell. I just want to, I'm going to slide my cursor along to get to my last slide. We are going to be going into our breakout rooms shortly. Can I just suggest that you use this as an opportunity to grab a cup of coffee, pop to the bathroom. It does take a few minutes to actually get the breakout rooms deployed. And also, Lynette needs to set the relevant co-pilots and people up as presenters. So please give us a few minutes to do that and to get the recording started. And I think, Kevin, you have something you just want to add. So I'm going to hand over to you.
So Wendy and I have hidden some gems for you within our PowerPoint where you see clues to be able to finish the badge on the MEC website, on the Microsoft Educator Center. You can then go complete these two badges, the Knowledge Construction badge and the Real World badge. We have included all the answers you need for the quiz throughout this presentation. So if you rewatch the presentation just now, you will be able to go and answer them too.
Okay, I think we're ready to go into breakout rooms. So over to you, Lynette, and we'll see you all on the other side in about 5 minutes.